NASA Johnson Space Center, and thought everyone should have access to their own personal factory. And we thought desktop printers were really cool, but we realized a lot of our friends, when they make things they're going to use, they have to be big. And unfortunately, there wasn't a 3D printer out there. So we started to share an idea online to make a toilet-sized 3D printer. And we made a lot of friends on Kickstarter, who were really great when we launched it South by Southwest 6 years ago. And they gave us, fast forward, about $2 million of free money to try and make this happen. So we make what's called the Gigabot. Starts at $10,000, and the only thing you need to know is it's big and it can print with a lot of materials, and there's one at UT.
But the other thing that we get to do is we put on the world's biggest hackathon. So I have a very small team of people, and you wouldn't believe how small, but we run garages all around the world. And our CEO, Satya Nadella, took over 5 years ago at Microsoft, and the very first thing he said was, I need all of you employees and interns to stop what you're doing for 2 days. You just have to stop what you're doing and start a project. Don't care what it is, just do something you're passionate about. Or go join somebody's project. But whatever it is, just stop what you're doing, think of something good to do, and go make it real in 2 days. And everybody loved that idea. And we had, I think, over 23,000 people last summer join us around the world for those 2 days to hack and do incredible things. Over 300 Hack for Good projects. So imagine taking your favorite community or nonprofit and doing something for them, right? Just because you're passionate, because you want to help them. So we have employees all over the world doing that kind of work all the time.
The other thing that I wanted to mention is I heard a particular word that I think is extremely special and important for the future of engineering, for the future of making, for innovation, for all of those things. And it's actually relevant to all of you sitting in your seats now. That was something a word that Mike mentioned in his presentation here just a moment ago. The word is passion. So I thought it was very interesting that they set aside a couple of days and said, what do you really care about? What's something that matters to you? Go do that. And the future of making stuff is really, as you have 3D printers and things like that you have a lot more power in your hands now, immediately, like today, than people did 5 years ago. You were sitting in your seat 5 years ago. And so your ability to move forward and to engage with the world and things that you really care about is actually pretty profound.
But I would just encourage you, as you go through your education, you start working, having internships, look for the things that make you really happy and dig in and go figure them out, because that's ultimately going to lead you to be very successful and content in your career. Yeah, so participating in a hackathon is really game-changing or life-changing in some cases. Some people always knew that they wanted to do something a little different to help or try something out, and until they did it, they didn't know that they could be that impactful. And it literally has changed, I've seen myself, changed people's lives, changed their career path, give them new ideas about what's achievable. So yes, just stopping and rolling up your sleeves and trying something is hugely important, and it changed our company.
How did it change your company?
Because now people know that they don't have to wait for their boss to tell them to go do something. They can just figure it out on their own and just go do it, right? Like you see this, right? Like you figured out how to do that, right? It's like nobody said, hey, Sam, let's go build a toilet-sized 3D printer, right? Like you saw the opportunity, you figured out how to do it, and you did it. And that's what people do at work now, is you can't wait around for somebody to tell you what to do. Go figure it out and go do it. That's the future of work.
Sometimes people say, I want to start a business, but for us, we were accidental entrepreneurs. We just, had this problem we were working on, and we were talking to people. So we started to share this thought we were having about people being able just to make their own objects or solve their own problems wherever they were. And NASA I had a job at NASA at the time where I got to meet other nonprofits, and NASA made the mistake of letting me keep a blog. So I would had this little blog going kind of about this idea and through Engineers Without Borders, and people started responding to it and saying, that's a really great idea. And my co-founder Matthew at the time had gotten one of the very first on Kickstarter little open source desktop 3D printers. Some of y'all may have in your school, and he's like, man, I think this is the future. We've used the really expensive big ones, and we thought, yeah, this is the future. We were like, if only it was a little bit bigger, because the groups we were talking to said, I want to print a toilet or a birthing stool or a lower leg, and that was all bigger than a printer. So we went to go buy one, and it wasn't there. So then we started on the blog saying, wouldn't it be great if there was a toilet-sized 3D printer that you could afford? And along the way we said, even if we make a big 3D printer, you still have to buy the stuff that feeds the printer. So wouldn't it be great if you could just use garbage? Because everyone has a garbage problem. And so then more people kind of joined the movement, if you will. And next thing I know, my teammates at NASA were saying, I think you're starting a company and you're quitting your job. And my boss was asking me when I was leaving. And then the president of Chile, of all places, sent a letter to us. They gave us $40,000 to start quitting our jobs and to move to Santiago, Chile, to try and make this happen. And we struck up a deal with Kickstarter and South by Southwest here in Startup Chile, who had a booth, and said, we will in 8 weeks, at the Startup Chile booth at South by Southwest, launch the world's first toilet-sized 3D printer under $10,000 and put it on Kickstarter. And we did, and we got funded in a day, because an editor of TechCrunch, this tech magazine, walked by and sent out a tweet. So it's just funny, for us, it was just kind of a series of conversations with really motivated people, and now we look to you. Afterwards, I'd love to hear what you would print, what we should do next. And what we find, though, that's really interesting is passionate people have great ideas and their own problem sets, and the way they use the technology is not what you thought they would use it for. So MD Anderson Hospital and Texas A&M Vet Teaching School and UT use this machine that we designed for friends in Rwanda. So I think what's really cool and with passion projects is when you release it, you get to watch people make it their own, and that's the best part.
Well, look, I take a car and I rewind the clock 100 years. It's an unrecognizable machine. If I do that with airplanes, it's really an unrecognizable machine. If I do it with computers, there is no machine. And yet if I do that with a wheelchair, it's the same thing. It's just that's just unacceptable to me. Just decided to do something about it. So I gave him some guidance on building his network, and that has progressed to where last semester we have an undergraduate liberal arts major had 2 senior design teams in engineering that were reporting to him. One in mechanical engineering is working on a cushion that changes its profile. And then there was a group in electrical engineering that had a bunch of sensors, pressure sensors, so you get pressure and time. And they're going to have a prototype in May that puts those 2 things together so that it's sensing pressure and time and then automatically changing the pressure profile. So that's, I think, going to take a step towards solving that problem. And it's because we have people coming with different interests, pursuing different backgrounds, pursuing art along with computer science, or psychology along with engineering. Those kinds of things. Seeking out that expertise that you may not put together. Right now, anyone who's sort of interested, and you have to do a little bit of work to find people and a little bit of work to make some of those connections. But if you're willing to do that, any combination of things is really possible.
And there's collaborative spaces now, right? You could go like yours.
Mine is one example, yes. And the one that's a little bit smaller version of my space that's in fine arts is actually open to anyone on campus. So there's some really interesting potential here. You can have a particular major that you're focused on, but you can really build expertise around that or build your network out to people all over campus. You may have heard that AI is going to really radically change the jobs, particular jobs. So truck drivers is one of the ones that makes the news. Several years from now, there really aren't going to be very many truck driving jobs available anymore because AI systems in trucks are going to take over those jobs. And so everyone's heard that. And then I asked the engineers, well, what do you think AI is going to do to engineering? Is it going to replace any of you? And they, of course, shake their head no, and then I sort of remind them, well, just so you know, there's a bridge in Amsterdam over a canal, and no one designed it, and no one built it. And I let them just sort of soak in that for a minute, get a little bit upset. It is a slight exaggeration, but an AI, some engineers set up the parameters, and an AI tool created or grew the structure, and then they had a couple of robots weld that structure. So yeah, you had to do a little bit of setup.
So to this point, there's a free book that any of you can download from Microsoft called The Future Computed. And it talks about what's going to happen to jobs and the ethics and how the world is going to change. And it sort of lays out very clearly that there is going to be a big shift and you should not be afraid of it. There's no question it's going to happen. And you should like really be curious and go read this book, because I think it will better prepare you to ask better questions about maybe what paths you should follow. It's nothing to be scared of. It's just, you know, the world's changing and every day it's getting faster and faster. So we all need to sort of figure out how we move forward.
And just to expand on that too, we talk a lot about jobs going away, but it also means that new jobs are being created. So in our field, we need more material scientists or people to test products, and the standards are changing. And there's more tools in the toolkit. So there's people designing those tools and managing those tools. So there's just a new way of looking at it. There's a group in Houston. They were two Rice students. They were graduate students at architecture school, and they wanted to do deployable flooring for Syrian refugees and refugees who might be in a camp for like 10, 12 years. And the floor often of the housing is dirt. And that's kind of a bummer, because when it rains, it gets muddy, it can be cold, it's not insulated, and it's just not comfortable when maybe you don't have a job and you're sitting around a lot with your family. So they came up with this plastic flooring that was quickly snapped together. So the use cases are wildly different. We have some stories on our blog, including some of the really fun things we've had the opportunity to do in Puerto Rico with our friends there after the hurricanes. And really, you know, all those stories are driven by needs from people like yourselves.
The manufacturing industry is changing pretty dramatically, because now, because of augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, you can see things that were always, you know, inside of a book, behind a screen, in your head, you know, some mental model. They're now in your field of vision, right? You can actually see things. They're holograms, they're digital things being injected into the real world. And so Microsoft recently has put a lot of effort and investment into supporting what we call first-line workers, so people that are on assembly lines and building things. And it's been very transformational, because people who had to remember something or look it up in a manual can now actually get help or see things right in front of their eyes. Their hands are free. They don't have to be holding a book or looking something up. And so it's, from that standpoint, very, very transformative for the people who are doing the work, people who are planning, like you were showing the inside of a manufacturing plant, being able to visualize the systems and the progress and what's happening around you is like a big game changer for that industry and many other industries. But in particular, manufacturing is changing for the better, because people can be more efficient, they're safer, and they actually are learning more about how to do their jobs better. And in some cases, that's probably the most important thing. People who didn't have the right training before can now be trained sort of as they're doing the work because of this active assistance. And so for them, it gives them new opportunities and better jobs and better lives for their families through technology. So it's pretty amazing. You should go check it out. Lots of videos out there about HoloLens and manufacturing.
I think they'll need more. So we see this a little bit now as people are thinking about 3D printing houses, maybe areas that are hard to get to, and what, you know, these smart robots do. But again, you know, the concrete mix that they're using takes engineers, and takes civil engineers to think about, you know, how that's going to be strong, and it takes, you know, the firmware and the coding that goes into programming these things. You know, so you need not just people with a specialization, maybe in mechatronics, but also in the computer science side of it. So my argument is you need more, but I don't think.
Yeah, robots are awesome. Robots are awesome, but we're always going to need smart people. Always. People part is never going to go away.